It's Thursday, March 5th, or the third day of our massive severe weather outbreak, and today could actually be a pretty large day centered over the southern and moving up into the central plains. At the highest, we have a slight risk, and I think this is mostly going to be for damaging winds and hail. For hail, we could see upwards of 2.5-inch hailstones. For winds, would not be shocked to see winds over 70 miles an hour. And then I think we could see a couple of tornadoes, and with our environment, a strong one is definitely not going to be out of the picture at all. So overall, starting today in the morning, it's going to be pretty quiet. We do have some weak storms. These are mostly just going to be rain showers from yesterday's convection. And at this point, this is just going to be a effective warm front tied to a cyclone undergoing cyclogenesis right up here in southeastern Colorado. And this is going to lift forward, advecting a lot of warm, moist air. We're also going to have a dry line in place. So we have our warm front and our dry line attached to that low pressure system, gradually increasing in strength until we get around the mid afternoon and suddenly pop along that dry line. We get our convection that's going to start. There is going to be some more stuff right around here, kind of bridging the gap between this convection and Mexico, which is going to move down through southern Texas. And then this is going to be the main blob to watch up here. Now, let me show you what's happening with our dry line right here. We're going to notice a couple of things. One is going to be how strong of a dry line this is. We have roughly 5-degree dew points on this side, and on this other side we have 55-degree dew points, and we're going to be looking for a couple of bulges. One thing is that right before our storms start to get moving, we really see our dry line sharpen down and push forward. Look at that, especially right here in what's going to eventually be our main sector for convection right here. Even if I move a little bit more forward, you're going to see how big that bulge is actually going to be. That's going to provide that forcing for those storms to really get up. Looking at our temperature, so right here is going to be our dry line, and then right up here is going to be our low pressure system. Definitely not a weak one at around 993 millibars is what it's predicted to be. And then we have our warm front. Another thing that's going to help with the initiation of those storms is going to be that warm front passing by. Now, this is going to bring temperatures potentially up near the mid 70s as well. And then this warm front is going to only advect further as we go into the night. You can see kind of the track our storms is going to take. It's going to have some warmer surface temps, probably around 63 degrees. And another thing with that warm front, it's going to convect quite a bit of instability. If I move back forward here to when we see our storms fire off, here's roughly where our warm front is going to be, and here's where our strongest instability is going to be. Definitely getting advected by that low pressure system moving, and that warm front moving northward. Then it's just going to kind of continue straight into a perfect path for our storms to follow, which will allow them to last pretty far into the night, actually. And then all of the ingredients are going to be coupled with some synoptic forcing. We actually don't have that strong of a 500 millibar trough moving through. We do have a bit of a jet max, or a bit of just a wrinkle or shortwave that's going to move through. Definitely not that strong, though, and that's one of the reasons why we are probably going to have a higher chance of seeing discrete convection with this. Also, we have another trough at 700 millibars, and this is pretty much positioned perfectly for our storms to really get the most out of it right here in that bottom right quadrant of our jet right there. And this is kind of more of a glancing blow, but also another big thing with this 700 millibar trough is that it's going to provide a lot of 700 millibar flow, which is definitely very positive for supporting all hazards of severe weather. But now we're going to move back to our actual convection and looking at what it's going to do. At first, we're going to see a couple of discrete supercells pop up right here. And this is also when the low level jet is going to be intensifying. A big part of this event is going to be how strong the low level jet is going to be. And probably within the first couple of hours, we're going to see a decently strong tornado threat at this point before these storms kind of move upscale into what's going to be mostly damaging wind and hail. More damaging winds than hail, though. And what's going to actually turn into a what looks like a MCS. So what we're seeing here, it looks like this is going to be a pretty powerful windbag that we're dealing with. Super duper organized. It's going to continue to move north and east. Another thing to note is that we are actually going to get some more convection up here in northeastern Kansas. A lot of this is just going to be elevated, though, and has a actually a pretty solid chance of maybe producing some damaging winds. And that's kind of why the SPC's risk area expands a little bit more to the north and east. But going back to what's going to be our main wind bag right here, moving through Oklahoma, it's really not going to slow down until we get to roughly 4, 5 in the morning. So until then, we're definitely seeing a chance of spin up tornadoes all the way through, a chance of damaging winds all the way through, and even a chance of some hail as we go through also. But it looks like the main thing with this is actually going to end up being damaging winds. But when I show you what the environment actually looks like on our weather sounding in a second, you will see that tornadoes are definitely going to be a big possibility with this. So admittedly, this is kind of a worst case scenario sounding out of this, but it is still important to remember that our parameters aren't going to be super far off from this. First thing we immediately gravitate to is how perfect this photograph is in the low levels. All of this flow is essentially perfectly streamwise in all of our effective inflow. These are some really big numbers, around 600 SRH and 52 knots of shear that's going to be going straight into that storm, because we almost have close to 100% streamwise flow. So these storms are going to be able to grow pretty big and pretty strong with some strong rotating updrafts, I think. Now, this is a worst case scenario sounding like I said, but we're still seeing a lot of SRH near 500. For reference, you only need about 150 for tornadoes and supercellular storms to be possible. On top of that, we're seeing our deep layer shear near 60 knots. So another thing with those strong rotating updrafts, especially when those storms are discrete. Now we're moving to those thermos. We're seeing our lapse rates in the upper or mid levels are going to be quite good, coupled with a fat bit of cape up here. Now, this is something, especially with our directional shear and how strong our winds are going to be up here. This immediately to me spells some really large hail. Honestly, I said 2.5-inch diameter stones at the start of the video. I wouldn't be shocked to see 3-inch diameter hailstones with this at all. Now, on the instability front, looks like we're going to be dealing with probably around widespread 1500 joules per kilogram of cape and a 3 cape nearing 100, and then also a downdraft cape over 1,000. So that downdraft cape is going to be a big indicator also with some of this dry air aloft of how we could actually get some damaging winds with this. And because this storm is going to be so organized and our shear is so positive, I definitely think 70-mile-an-hour gusts are going to be in play. Now, with this 3 cape and general instability, we're going to see definitely a potential for tornadoes to kind of be on the come up with this. We're going to see over 60-degree dew points, and because these storms are going to be in slightly higher elevations than what you see in the southeast, that's definitely going to be enough for these storms to work with. Is it ideal? No, but it's definitely going to be pretty solid. So that's really what we're going to be dealing with today for this threat. For a couple of these other clusters that I didn't touch on, the one moving kind of into southern Texas, then a couple of these cells blossoming up along the dry line, probably around right near sunset, especially when that low level jet kicks in, kind of helping with that convergence a bit more. It looks like the main threat with those is going to be damaging winds and hail. The main hindrance for those is that they're not going to have enough deep layer shear to really stay organized. So that's kind of one of the reasons why a tornado threat doesn't look as likely for those. Not out of the picture completely, but these are definitely going to be more of a damaging wind and hail threat. Then, of course, we have that massive wind bag that we just talked about with all of those super positive parameters. And the craziest thing about today's setup, even though it looks pretty robust and formidable, is that it's only supposed to be the appetizer for tomorrow, which is expected to be the big day. We already have a enhanced risk over here. Not entirely sure we're going to see that risk raised to a moderate. I'm leaning more towards no on that, but there is a really high confidence of seeing widespread severe weather in the central plains, honestly moving all the way from the southern plains up to the Midwest tomorrow. So that's definitely going to be something to look out for, and look out for that video tomorrow also on this. This is probably going to be more of a damaging wind and hail setup, but tomorrow we'll get more into where these threats are going to be most present and how strong that tornado threat will be also.